what that reminded me of, right, is conventional top-down structures, right, for things like uh, uh, grants programs, right? They're almost a similar thing, right, where uh, it doesn't tell you anything about how to actually uh, uh, um, get through, right, the process of community support, the process of review, right? What exactly is going on there, and uh, it's really up in the air what's going on there, right? Or if it's in a hyper concentrated context or a super conventional context where it may just be a bad day for whoever's reviewing your grant, right? And that changes the impact. So, but with Turtle Wolf and Bear, it's more than just protons, neutrons, and electrons in terms of a description. The same way that, okay, here's this grant program, and here's a review process, and this particular flow. Um, um, with Turtle Wolf and Bear, you know how um, your you know exactly the path, right, to community support, to getting your idea fleshed out, to having your uh, uh, journey accurately represented and articulated, and the value communicated, right? And so this, I think, is something that should go into the language, right? And maybe with this new addition of the clan integration, outward-facing content can include the clan design as a means of walking folks through the flow, right? And so, along with the diagram that Hiro spoke to, we can have step by step through the clan flow. In terms of the journey's clan flow now, not the consensus clan flow. So, yeah, at least it could be a good scaffolding, along with some of this language around serious design around distributed power in a grants program, right? Bringing that power to the community's hands in a distributed way through the clan system, right? And so, thank you kindly, Haas, for helping frame some of this outward-facing content. And hopefully, let me run that by you guys as a way forward, right? Maybe that's a scaffolding that we'll use, both the proposal to the broader advocates community and active issues around journeys, along with like an outward-facing one-pager of what this version of community grants looks like. What do you guys think?
I would just, you hearing me okay?
Yes.
Right. So I just had a look on the foundations page. Actually, they're calling from where you enter the grant dashboard. They're actually calling everything community grants on the most top level.
Yeah, I thought so too as well. Yeah.
And then only when you get into the dashboard itself, um, they will, like when you go through the actual process, then it will say stats grants, stats residents, and it will divide into 4 different boxes. But when you go through their website, it's actually just all community grants. So if we
Yeah.
also call it community grants, it might cross over a little bit. So that would be my only um, that would be the only thing that perhaps need to be clarified or
Yeah.
differentiated.
Yeah. 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 I was vaguely familiar with that. Especially like on the landing pages, like this very general
Mm.
community grants language as well. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
But of that, I've got other thoughts.
Yeah.
And since we are a very going back to what you said, like in the past 15 minutes, more like um, the bottom up kind of method. What about if we do refer it to bottom up initiatives or community initiatives or something to do with the bottom up? So it's a bit more explicit and maybe more ingrained. I'm trying to look for other similar words, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No. No. I would agree with the sentiment that it'd be nice to have some of that language. Um, you know, like you said, more ingrained into the community ethos in general, right? So it could be a means of doing so. Um, uh, yeah, there's a lot of directions I would go that maybe other folks wouldn't, right? Maybe get too specific if we go with upskilling or something like this, but
Yeah,
something like
I think somebody or maybe has mentioned like intrinsic motivation. So yeah, like intrinsic initiative. I'm trying to like throw some words at everybody, see if we can
bottom. Yeah,
uh, like like see if anything comes up. But yeah, like maybe at the moment, like bottom up initiatives, bottom up community grants, and now bottom up
yeah,
something.
yeah. It's hard to not turn it into a sentence, huh? But yeah,
It's
yeah,
just like then it's a bit more like it's like there, and you kind of have to practice it since we call it, and also like it will very more um, instantly or perhaps obviously differentiate from the rest of the grants,
yeah,
perhaps.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it will take some thinking on it. It probably could always evolve too. But yeah, no, thank you kindly. Yeah, you got me stumped too. Bottom up grants, bottom up journeys. Um, but anytime you have bottom up for some reason, it sounds like a whole sentence.
Donkey dick.
Donkey dick, yeah. I think if we say that one more time, it is definitely not going to get flagged on YouTube. But yeah.
Oh shit. It's unlisted anyway, so donkey dick.
Yeah. That would be hilarious. That definitely you stick out. You
Are you no pun intended, no?
oh, no pun intended.
No. No fun intended.
But yeah, um,
I
yeah,
think
yeah,
bottom up something is a little bit word mouthful, but like the
yeah.
net sort of
Ass is up. Ass is up.
This
yeah,
is
like hips up. Like I think because if I think of two scenarios, let's say we call it something very generic, um,
yeah,
and it works, versus something just a little bit more mouthful, but it's very precise to
yeah,
the nature of it, and then every day you literally would be talking about it because like um, foundation grant, everybody have to refer to the phrase grants and grants every day in their conversation. So if you do have something more mouthful, but people have to keep referring to it, um, even though it's it's annoying to perhaps refer to, but you are in. subconsciously, intentionally practicing it every day, which may help to ingrain and actually differentiate from the top down method.
Yeah.
Like it's a net positive, I would probably say, than
Yeah.
if you had a generic and it works perfectly fine, but it's not very reinforced on a daily basis, and that would start potentially to dilute the essence of the program.
No, yeah. I'm just stuck on like there's always the only other word that is almost synonymous with bottom up is horizontal when it comes to like the system design context, but it's like
Yeah, a little bit
like
more abstract, that word.
even even with bottom up, it's almost like it comes out of nowhere. Like bottom up, what? Like what? I think for us, it's really for folks that are even care about governance, it's more of a familiar thing with system design. But for the general folk, right? Like it's just words. Like they're not even familiar with the top down context or what have you, which is important for us. And I know a big part of your point about learning, like the building in the learning curve. But no, I agree. We should maybe play with the naming fairly intentionally. But also, I dig what you said about the, if it's so overly generic and still works, right? There's some positives there, but yeah, folks like Dan and folks, the core community contributors for a long time have been, fairly vocal, or at least in sessions like this, around the language that we use around governance and bottom up this, bottom up that, versus the language that doesn't get out there marketing wise, right? Very often, and I think it really would be efforts like yours in this moment that makes that possible, right? It actually has to come from somewhere that sees the value in it. And so, yeah, I don't know. Anybody else has any ideas that are essentially a branding decision, I guess, to some degree? But I think too, like Haas says, this is ultimately just a step to trying to establish some autonomous accessibility to commons. And so community grants commons? I don't know.
Fred,
Stacks Commons.
Yeah, stacks commons, right?
Wait, so is every journey a microDAO? And what exactly is a microDAO? Is it like its own entity?
Yeah, you can see the smart contract language. It's 200 so lines from Haas that allows folks to add each other to what is a DAO contract, and then you can send a funding proposal to that DAO to fund the micro DAO. So yeah, each
Okay,
journey.
yeah, because there's no documentation on it. It's just a contract, but since it's like human readable, you can kind of discern for yourself what it all means by just reading through it.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't think Haas has any. Doesn't have a README or anything in his repo. Maybe he does. Let me see.
just think of it like three of us want to get together and organize something, and we together put money down, but it goes to a computer code instead of a bank, because a bank has to be under somebody's name. But when we put money down, we put it into code. It's owned by everybody, and everybody, unless everybody when you want to move money or move any fund in or out of the bank, the code, you have to all agree. So that's basically it. And MicroDAO is just a name for that, the tool.
So is the only currency that is able to be used by that contract Stacks?
No, I
No.
think
Stacks
there
the
are
only
many
currency?
currencies you can use.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
Has added features to it to where there's quite a handful of different currencies that can be used now.
I think
So
anything
you
on
may just want
Stacks
to do those
network.
in a stable. You may just want to do the contracts in a stable coin with the volatility of everything right now.
Mm-hmm. I think that's what he had in mind. Yeah, and to answer your question too, Fred, you had asked if each journey is a micro DAO. Yeah, that's how we've been thinking about it so far. Yeah.
Or you could just call it like something to do with micro DAOs then. That way you can get Haz's little creation out there more. Little marketing ploy.
Yeah. I don't know. We also too, right? We can get we'll likely have input from the foundation in this regard too, right? In terms of what might be the best outward facing language for it, or maybe they do just want to ensure that it falls nicely under that community grants umbrella, and we just put our own funk on it in the actual processes. I'm not sure.
So someone comes up with a journey idea, right? And then like the community kind of like everybody that sees like some type of alignment with that journey kind of like voices their support and like tries to like help them like flesh it out more, right? And like shine it up real nice, and then it gets pitched to like the foundation, right? There's no like pool of money that the foundation is giving the advocates to like come to a consensus on how it's getting distributed to journeys, right? It's like they're still trying to pitch it to a typical grant.
Yeah, in the spec, there's a step where there is still a, and this is where Haas talks about it being crucial, right? Grants program reviews and asks questions about the grant. Grants program either accepts to fund the grant or doesn't. This is where the community support is crucial, as this is the part that helps get a grant funded, right? But there has been some talk previously about especially if we can have nonprofit structure set up on the GovLab side, which we do thanks to yourself, Fred. We could use some of those nonprofit structures that you have up. Maybe that'll lend itself to us having easier funding capacities from just the advocates side of things. But yeah, I think as of now, and for access to what would be a bigger treasury right off the bat, I think that's why Haas has it in the spec the way that it is. And then everything else that you said is accurate and can be seen in the spec that's in the chat, and that shouldn't be too far up. But yeah, it's not, the fact us having our own nonprofit structures up, I think would make it easier, even if we didn't have our own, journey specific treasury, even if we did had to, communicate each grant to the foundation, having nonprofit structures up of our own still makes that transfer of funding easier on the foundation's side of handling any of the taxes related stuff for this type of stuff, it actually, I think it's that responsibility gets diffused to us, right? But it also means that we, you know, there'd be a whole lot less dependencies on whatever the foundation's tax structures are, right?
Yeah, or even just trying to get them to like go at a certain speed.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that's some of the discussions that have been communicated from the foundation as we're starting to get what's possible with this tooling communicated to them. And so a lot of that tug and pull will probably continue and get refined, hopefully, in terms of the best language to achieve when communicating the value of this stuff to the foundation. And the fact that there's all of this community support, and not just, you know, the saying, okay, we support this, but, you know, in the sense of having community support that is authentic and quality, helping flesh out the grants, right? Or likely add components to each grant that make it that much more obviously valuable to the foundation, especially when it's pinpointed where those contributions came from. It may be more obvious too. So, yeah, hopefully it just makes, you know, it makes for what may be ideas that start somewhere. We should be sure to emphasize in the system that the type of quality community support that can turn into robust enough grant, you know, that it's an obvious decision for the foundation that doesn't require so much review on their part at all, because it's happening on our end, right? Which is a beautiful thing. To, you know, sustainability, right? The rules, you know, for what's determined in the system, right, are defined by the generators of value in that system, as opposed to defined somewhere else, right? So I think this will largely be just communicating the value, to have, you know, at least some of that on our, you know, on our end, possible on our end, is a big thing. And it'll be on us, I guess, to refine how we do that. But yeah, I think it's possible. Yeah, thanks, Fred, for some of the clarity there. Yeah, and again, it is in the spec. It talks about how crucial that community support is for.
Yeah, I read that first before coming up with what I wanted to ask. That's why I was like, oh, okay. So we're kind of like, if anything, we're kind of like bootstrapping journeys to like get them to a point where they feel more comfortable applying for a grant. At least at the beginning, right? Until it's such a like efficient way of administering grants that the foundation's just like, hey, you want to take some of the load off our hands or whatever.
Well, that is kind of what's happening already, right? Like, especially when it comes to more non-technical grants, there's some of the holes in getting every single person that applies, right? Especially if it's more community growth or development focused rather than technical, right? You know, the folks who aren't comfortable writing a grant in the first place, right? Like, this is already, from the foundation's perspective, right, going to be an alternative path for this, right, where they don't want to miss that particular boat, right? You see other ecosystems really focus on even non-technical funding, right? Quite often, right? And so the foundation, I think, is articulated, recognizing the value in that, and seeing what we've already gotten off the ground to a certain extent, lending itself to helping with that, right? And we've communicated the same thing, right, in terms of the way the review process in this, from our system design perspective, becomes a lot more distributed, right? Both in power and time, right? Which the foundation, I think, has started to feel some of the barriers, right, to the more concentrated review process rather than distributed. So I think the clan system will be very important to ensuring that distribution of power is sustained as well. And again, some of the points that I mentioned in response to Fred, I think will be huge for Turtle, right, and Bear, right, in terms of the bridge work. But like the reason why Haas says it's crucial is that if you can just point to the community, like quality community support for each and every one of these journeys, which is what the clan's flow is trying to engender, right? Then it becomes that much more easier for the foundation to recognize the value to the ecosystem, right? And it's as supposed to be the main criteria for the Stacks grants as is as well, right? It's just that it's not necessarily designed to be engendered in even though it's spoken to in what's supposed to be the comments of given grants proposals or what have you that come through the repo. There's a whole lot, to Hero's point, a whole lot of folks who don't use GitHub or are uncomfortable with GitHub. They just may have a Web3 wallet, right, and hopping into a Discord server. So this, is hopefully something that can lend itself, right, to more built-in community support other than the open-endedness of the Stacks grants as is, right? And while we kind of emphasize some of the load being taken off of the foundation in that way in meetings with the foundation, and folks working at grants ambassadors like Will and Adam, if I'm not mistaken, we've had yet to emphasize what we can emphasize, which is what was just mentioned about the built-in community support, right? I mean, we've touched on that, but I think it sounds to them more like informal community gathering around a particular project rather than what the clan system really can engender, which is that quality community, even real-time support. Not just support in the way of being okay with it as something that gets funded in the ecosystem, but this design really pushes folk or encourages folks to come together to see a particular journey through, which is not necessarily built in GitHub, right? It's kind of open-ended for that to occur if you just happen to be one of those community members that already has support, right? But if you're a community member that doesn't have so much support, it could be like posting into a void to a certain extent. And the same thing with Discord, without the addition of the system design that we're thinking of, all the concepts of commons that we built into advocates and governance, right, that is possible now, and it gives us this much more robust design rather than an open-ended one, right, when it comes to that word support, right? So yeah, thanks, Fred, for emphasizing this. I think myself and Haas have got to talk to that much more often than we've got to talk about it collectively. So it's important. and important clarity too around exactly where we are right from the foundation. Are handing off, I think, in their own words, a lot of the non-technical growth efforts and funding efforts, right? What may be smaller technical projects, right? Maybe the bigger technical projects or research projects that we've seen with the residency or the grants program as is. So there's that partial handoff, right? And if we can show what's possible with bigger technical projects as well, or show consistency with the smaller projects that end up leading to consistent residencies or leading to consistent grants that are funded and trusted, right? Quality community growth. Yeah, maybe there's even more handoff, but to a certain extent, right, you've already gotten the green light for this smaller handoff. And that's part of the reason why we wanted to think about those nonprofit structures as well, or the foundation started to think about those nonprofit structures being in place for us as well. Yeah, thank you for it. And again, I think we got some scaffolding down, thanks to some contributions from Haas, other folks here. Merrick, I don't know if any of this has sparked anything for you, or Mark, Doc, you guys are welcome to chime in if you have anything on your mind or not. But yeah, we can do a closing, I think, with some good action items, a little bit more zeroed in than last time. Some of the same action items, but I think this much more fleshed out amongst us all. We're thinking about those additions to the spec for some time asynchronously, but happy to use this time to get it across to you guys, get your input, feedback, and got some additions from Merrick. Comes to office hours, some things sparked by other folks in this discussion, so we can add and see through. But yeah, I'll leave the floor open before we can do a closing, and more folks can do a closing. Just me, I'll be up for it.
I have something to say. What about the Great Peace Organization? They're a nonprofit. I mean, there'd be maybe something that we could look at. Harold, I don't know if what you think of that.
Yeah, that was actually brought up by the foundation as well. But like I said, Fred had recently set up some structres for us here in Fresno, and I myself, though for some years now, I think a few years now, Angel had mentioned maybe including myself and Desiree into the structures up there in Canada. We discussed it again, I think, over the years in terms of additional structures for the U.S. And then we had decided on what I think Fred ultimately did, which is create some nonprofit structures here in Fresno. And we can ultimately use it as part of headquarters or what have you of the Longhouse, as the Longhouse is mentioned before. But it would be distinct structures. But yeah, so we figured we use that. Fred did get them up, and I think Fred mentioned we could always change the names around, I think. But he's already made some changes to the mission and things that were needed to incorporate some of what Advocates is doing. And I don't know, maybe there'll be more changes with some of this stuff needed, with all of that legal stuff I'm not too familiar with myself. But no, thank you kindly, Mark. That was something that even the foundation mentioned, being aware of the Great Peace Org. But luckily enough, these structures are already in place here in Fresno, and my name and Dez's name already attached to it, right? So hopefully it makes for a quicker transition that the foundation alluded to for this partial handoff. Yeah, no, thank you kindly, Mark. if there's nothing else folks would like to add, we can do a closing. Yeah. Thank you kindly all for being here again, as always. Let me see here. So, all right, I'll do a closing. Edith from Longhouse usually says, "Yonkwatsununi skatne, yonkwate iron," right? Which is, we're all happy that we've grown together. But I'll go on to give a closing. Harold Yonjuts, Yonjon Ageo, Yonjatanua, Yodiskerewage, which means here under the temporary protection of the Bear Clan. In that context of the Kanyaga Haga Nation. I think here in Advocates, I'm actually under the temporary protection of Turtle Clan as of now. So maybe we should think about that when we're doing these openings, closings, introductions of ourselves. Might be important for mapping later, who knows? But Donald Deganite Hade, which I'm also under protection through this Tua Wampum dialogue of the Longhouse up the hill. Onunto Harage Ganon Sesne, which it means Longhouse up the hill. On this Nagogoa Chibuntaze or Yokonu Ronkwa Serawana or Skywoman, or our great mother's original love, or all-encompassing life force. Is some of the additions to the language I'm trying to learn. But again, it's reference to this broader design of regeneration, right? You see in that great spiral of regeneration, right? From there, we thank Yonki Sotogarakwa, Grandmother Moon, being the being heart of a Mother Earth. We give thanks to our Mother Earth, which could be Yonki Ahonsa. From there, we give thanks to all of the life givers and all strains of life, spirit givers, Tukundi Nakarat Gawas, understanding the regeneration at this scale and how important it is for us, giving thanks for them being our direction and our purpose, from every baby girl to the eldest grandmother. From there, we ask our ancestors of the good mind to help us restore this matrilineal authority, right? This sequencing, understanding how important regeneration is before you build anything or organize anything. How important this is for long-term sustainability. And a big part of what brings us together here, in the context of the GovLab, Stacks Advocates, and we give thanks to Oneganos, all the waters, all the shapes and forms that they come in. We give thanks to all the medicines and all the shapes and forms they come in, including those of us here, lending their ears, voices, to trying to make this dialogue that much easier, right, between indigenous original peoples and essentially the generators of value of technologies and systems that get built today. Understanding how important Turtle is, Turtle Clan. Give thanks to Turtle Clan for making this attempt that much smoother. Give thanks to Wolf Clan for making this attempt that much smoother, Bear Clan, so that we don't have to wing this particular effort. It can't be understated, or overstated, I should say, what our ancestors of the good mind have given us, passed down to us in terms of tools and protocols for achieving a fairly ambitious effort, right? So, now go, everybody. We push the bad away on all three levels of creation. Air to sour, air to sour, air to sour. I'm going. see you guys soon. And hopefully this was a productive session for you guys like it was for myself. I think we'll see the outward-facing language pretty soon with that scaffolding in the form of active issues proposal. Hopefully along with igniting some of the code of conduct proposals and getting a new one out there as well. So yeah, I look forward to seeing you guys either in some of that usage of the tooling or tomorrow's session. I think we'll have a session where we can get down and maybe get started with some of that together if it makes for a good session. Thank you,
Harold,
Connie.
Harold.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, I thought you were going to another talk.
Oh, was it the same time period? Let me make sure.
That's what I asked. I think so because it's Tuesday, 5 p.m. EST. Or maybe you have that. Oh, wait.
Maybe it works. Let me see. Good catch, though. Let me see. p.m. Eastern Time. So that's about 2 p.m. over here. We have a little time if you guys want to meet. But yeah, maybe it's definitely a hard stop.
Unless, well, I don't know. Unless you move tomorrow's session a little bit earlier, then you have to shoot to the other talk.
Yeah, and yeah, this is supposed to be a brief panel on hyperchains that Hero is speaking to. Myself and Haas and other folks from the Hero team are going to be on. I think it's going to be Twitter Spaces, or no, actually it's going to be a Discord discussion. And yeah, I think that'll be 2 my time. So if we start around 1:30, only give us half an hour. So how do you guys feel? You guys want to meet earlier, or you guys are free to get down without me as well? But yeah, how do you guys feel? We could start earlier. You guys can continue the same time without me.
I could go a bit earlier myself. I could go like an hour or 2 earlier.
Okay. What about you, Hero?
Yeah, I think would be. I think 30 minutes is probably not enough to have a session. So I think minimum 1 hour plus would be ideal. But I think 1 hour could be fine.
Okay. All right. Let's try to do it that way then. That way we're not too far away from the original time. If folks want to catch us, and it'll still give us a little bit of time together. Yeah, thank you, Connie, for catching that, Hero. Much better to catch it now than later. Yeah, I don't know how if we'll be able to change the event so easily, but maybe we can ask around and see if somebody has permissions to do that. I still don't have permissions to start these sessions, so on the calendar. So yeah. But thank you guys. This has been beautiful as always. I really look forward to these weekly, knowing that we get to get deep in this way together, do a lot of learning together, and still surreally have an impact on the technologies in this spaces. So yeah, guys, have a beautiful day, I hope.
Cool. See you tomorrow.
All right. See you guys soon.
Thanks, Harold. See you guys.
All right.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks, Harold. See you.
Good to see you, Mark. Doc. All right.